Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Good evening. Please, if you can hear me, you can just indicate.
Good
Maybe.
evening, sir.
Yeah. Good evening. How are you guys doing? Or how are you doing?
Fine, sir.
All right. Welcome to today's class. This is the fourth week of our fourth quarter mentorship for data privacy and protection. You are all welcome to class. Thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate your presence here. Very soon, we'll soon be getting into the business of the day. So I want to thank everyone for making it out to class. We'll be starting with our normal announcements, and we'll be having that right now. Okay, for announcements, our registration for next quarter is ongoing, right? So if you have friends, colleagues, and family members who are interested in this program, right, you can tell them about it. You can share our flyers. You can message me. I'll send you the flyers. You can also share with your friends so that they can be a part of this amazing platform that gives us the opportunity to have quality time with our mentors and learn very informative things about different fields and different areas. So on our course list, we have intellectual property, we have artificial intelligence and technology, we have the energy industry, fintech industry, health tech and law, patent drafting, blockchain, NFT and metaverse, data privacy and protection, entertainment, business and law. So if you are interested in participating in the next quarter, if not in data privacy, you can choose from any of these courses, and I'm sure you would have a wonderful experience as you have had, or you have been having rather, with data privacy and protection. Okay, onto our next announcements. 30 minutes one-on-one mentorship with your favorite gypsy mentor is still, the registration for that is still ongoing. So if you have a favorite mentor that you want to connect with in that sense, and you want to get some hacks, secrets, life lessons, and direction from your favorite mentor, you can send a message to me and I'll send you the link for the registration. Going into the business of today, let's introduce our mentors. Our first mentor for today is Mr. Ridwan Olayede Badmos. Ridwan is a co-founder and Tech Hive Advisory. He advises on the global aspects of.
Hello, if I may.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, and it's actually a privilege to be here. I'm happy to to join you. There's actually a mix-up or a mistake, and I'd like to quickly bring that up because it's actually a very significant one. So in terms of the name and then in terms of the description as well, there's a lot of mistakes here. So I am Ridwan Badmos, not Ridwan Olayede Badmos, and the picture there is actually one of a kind of a general mentor to most practitioners in Nigeria. I mean, privacy practitioners in Nigeria. That's Ridwan Olayede actually. I am Ridwan Badmos, and I think you have his profile, on this picture as well. So I just wanted to pick that up because it's actually very important. So if you could, I don't know how you'd want to correct that now, but then I think it's very important we do that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ridwan Badmos. Sorry about that mistake. It was have been in the compilation that we made that mistake. I'm so sorry about that. We'll look into it and we'll make the necessary corrections, sir.
Okay, it's fine.
All right.
Thanks.
So that's Mr. Ridwan Badmos. We'll be taking the profile of our next mentor, Mr. Matthew Saisi. Matthew Saisi is a Kenyan qualified lawyer with an LLM in computer and communication law. He currently specializes in data protection and cybercrime and serves as a certified information privacy practitioner. He has worked with various organizations, including Microsoft and OneTrust, and presently works as a data protection lawyer at PwC UK. He also has a passion for mentorship and youth engagement. That's our second mentor for today, Mr. Matthew Sais. Welcome, Mr. Matthew Sais. Thank you for joining us. All right, our third mentor for today, our very, very famous mentor, Mr. Matthew Ewere. Mr. Matthew's profile is a bit long, so I'll just maybe read the first few lines, and you can go to our LinkedIn page at JIIPCC, and you can get the rest of his profile there. Matthew Ewere is an accomplished information technology lawyer specialist and with a wealth of experience in guiding clients through the intricate legal landscape of technology. With over 8 years of expertise in the field, he has been a trusted advisory for several legal matters related to information technology, including data privacy, cybersecurity, intellectual property, and e-commerce. For the want of time, we'll just have you go to our LinkedIn page to get access to the rest of his bio. Welcome, Mr. Matthew. I think our fourth mentor for today is Ms. Sandra AK. Ms. Sandra is an associate in SPA Ajibade & Co. Intellectual Property and Technology, Data Privacy and Protection, and Communication Departments, where she advises clients on a wide range of intellectual property rights, data protection, and communication law issues. She routinely advises high network companies on registration, enforcement, rights transfer, and portfolio management of trademarks, copyrights related issues, commercialization, registration, renewal, and licensing of patents and design in Nigeria, OAPI and ARIPO, and other jurisdictions. She also advises local and international clients on telecommunication, licensing, data privacy and protection issues, and compliance requirements under the relevant data protection legislation in Nigeria. She has written several articles on various aspects of intellectual property rights, rights exploitation, data privacy and protection, telecommunication, MONDAC, global law experts, corporate livewire, intellectual property experts guide, and Nigerian law intellectual property watch. One of her co-authored articles won the most popular article award on MONDAC in September 2020, which led to her recognition as a thought leader in data protection on MONDAC in 2021. She's passionate about IP and data protection rights and regularly conducts in-house training on this subject matter. She has had the opportunity to mentor and speak to several law students, legal practitioners, and business owners on a wide range of IP-related management and data protection compliance related issues. She was recently recognized by the Nigerian Intellectual Property Club as an influential woman in IP and awarded the Afe Babalola University Intellectual Property Club for her unwavering support towards the development of IP among students in Nigeria. That's our first mentor for today. Welcome, Ms. Sandra Eke. I know this, our fifth mentor for today, needs no introduction. He's well known. He has been through with us from the first week right till now. That's Mr. Solomon Okedara. And I'll just be reading the first few lines to just give him an intro, and then we'll just step right into class. So Mr. Solomon Okedara, barrister, a solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, is a practicing legal practitioner and researcher with over 14 years post-call experience and outstanding expertise in human rights with a special bias for digital rights, including data privacy and data protection and privacy, data identity, online expression, intellectual property, e-commerce, tech, and corporate transaction, and artificial intelligence. To get access to more of Mr. Mr. Solomon's bio, you can click on our LinkedIn page. You can follow us on LinkedIn and you will have access to his profile. Thank you, Mr. Solomon Okidara. Sorry, I won't be moderating today's section. We have our moderator here on call. I just stepped in for him for the time being. Mr. Godslove Kamalo, please, you can take over now, sir.
Okay, hello everyone, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to week 4 on data privacy and protection here at the JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship Program. A huge welcome to all our mentors for today's session. Thank you very much, Mr. Dennis, for stepping in. Had a hiccup with my Zoom. So we'll move on straight into today's session. I'll just call on our mentors to give us their opening on the discourse for today. We're looking at data breach management. So they'll give us their intro, and after that, we'll go to our mentees for their presentation. Okay, someone who we know very, very much. So if he's on the call, let me confirm that. Hello, mentees, can we hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I think that was Mr. Dennis answering. Mentees, are we here? Okay, I think I'm seeing responses now. So I want to kick off then with Mr. Ridwan Badmos. Welcome, sir. Let's have your opening on the discourse for today. And how are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Godslove.
Thank you very
as I said initially, it's a privilege to be here. And it's more privilege to, to be amongst or to be in the midst of my honorable, colleagues. I can see Mrs. Sandra AK here, though we haven't met personally, but then I would like to recognize our presence here. So my name is Ridwan Badmos. I am currently a tech lawyer at the law firm of Oguntoye and Oguntoye. And I also act as the Chief Technology Officer, as a technical person for the law firm. I'm so passionate. I'm so much passionate and very big on privacy and data protection and cybersecurity as well. And that has actually led me to to delve into lots of fields that's I would say kind of a bit of unique in the sense that as a lawyer. So, and I think I will name some of those areas, and I think I'll be dwelling more on those areas to see if lawyers could help, because one of my major objectives here is actually to kind of instill that interest of all the areas of privacy and data protection especially in lawyers and even engineers that's in the tech industry. So I have really dwelled upon different areas that are related or connected to privacy and data protection, which includes privacy technology, privacy engineering, and the likes. And so what I think I will let me put it this way: the interesting thing about data breach that I would really love to talk about today is how it can actually be mitigated, because almost everyone knows. I mean, it's already an established fact that it's not really about if you're going to have a data breach, but when it's going to occur. So how do you mitigate it, or how do you even, when a data breach occurs, how can you kind of even kind of avoid the consequences or the implications that comes after it? So I will be looking at that, the bringing in that connection between law, technology, and privacy engineering, and how lawyers could actually help their clients, or how they can help different technology organizations to navigate that area. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for that brief intro. Okay, I also see Susan AK in on the call this evening. Hello, Susan. Welcome to today's session on data breach management of the data privacy and protection course. Can we get your introduction and your insights with regards to the topic for today? Hope you had a great day, though.
Please, I'm struggling to know if you are talking to me. I'm Sandra AK, not Susan AK. So is
sorry,
it me or
Sandra
someone
AK.
else?
Sorry. Welcome, Sandra AK. It's you. I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. I have a Susan AK, so the name just came out, Susan. Welcome, Sandra. Nice to have you on the session today.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. And I welcome all the other mentors as well that I'll be speaking today. Actually, I didn't know how this presentation was going to be. I didn't even know that it was going to be like, I was going to have other mentors speak at the same time, as, like we have it now, because I had even prepared like a slide presentation that I would use for today's meeting. But I guess from the structure of the presentation today, we'll just have to just speak in turns, which is also fine by me. The topic for today is, or the topic anyway that I selected was data breach management, understanding data breaches and its impact, detection, response, best practices for data breach management. And as Mr. Badmos just rightly said, one thing about data breach incidents is, really, it's not really a matter of, oh yeah, it can happen to my organization or it can happen to me, but it's a matter of when, because even the most structured or the most compliant organizations have gone through, data breach incidents before. Data breaches are every organization's or even an individual's worst nightmare. They involve the breach of security, since we're talking about personal data here, of personal data leading to an accidental or lawful destruction, loss, alteration, unauthorized disclosure, unauthorized access to, your personal data. So they do not only result in the loss of maybe the goodwill of an organization or a company, or even you as an individual. It doesn't even only result in the goodwill of maybe of the brand that you have built over time, but they could also have severe financial implications, which is capable of crippling an organization. Regrettably, or sadly, no matter how protected or how prepared an organization is against a data breach, there may still be a slim possibility of the occurrence of a breach, even especially in this digital age era with the proliferation of new technologies. So it's very interesting to note that some of the biggest data breaches, like I earlier mentioned, have occurred in some of the biggest multinational companies, irrespective of their data protection practices. And effective data breach management is very important to mitigate, the impact of these data breach incidents. Also, it's also important to recognize the importance of data security, the importance of complying with the data protection regulations or laws that we have in place, and the importance of being proactive, meaning that you have to take steps to protect your personal data in your custody from breaches and ensure that data such as personal information are handled with care and integrity and in accordance with the principles of data protection. So personal data breach management is something that is very important and is a core focus, of many organizations that take data privacy very seriously, particularly in the workplace. And today, as we go on a discussion with other mentors that I'll be speaking, I would also be highlighting some important data breach management practices. Also, I'll also talk about steps an organization or maybe an individual can take to help, in the case or in the occurrence of a data breach incident. Maybe when it happens, what to do next? Do you panic? What do you do next? Actually, I'm going to break this down in the course of my discussion, alongside discussing on some administrative sanctions and even some criminal prosecution, that could be involved in data breach management or data breach incidents. So I think I'll just end here so I can allow other people speak.
Okay, then also with regards to your material you also prepared, there's no problem with actually sharing it. So when you're ready, actually share your screen with us, and we're really happy to go with you on the journey throughout the presentation. If that's fine. Hello, ma'am. Let me see Sandra.
Oh, sorry, I was speaking. I didn't know that I was muted. Sorry. I said, let us just continue.
Okay.
Let's
Yes,
just
yes.
continue. I really don't want to have to take or encroach into anybody's time. Let's just continue within the discussion. If there's any time where I have to share my slides when I'm talking about a certain point, of course, I'll be happy to do that. But
Thank you
yes,
so
I'll
much.
give
That's
the floor to
perfect.
other mentors. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for that wonderful insight into data breach management. Up next, we'll listen to Mr. Matthew. It's nice to have you again, sir. It's been an honor meeting you again, and we hope to drink from your wealth of knowledge. Please welcome on board, and let's hear from you with regards to the discuss for today on data breach management. Mr. Matthew, over to you, sir.
Hi, thanks, God's love. Thanks, everyone. It's good to be back. For me, I think what I would probably be looking to bring out or to emphasize is how data breach management works in practice. In my mind, what I've seen in theory and what I've seen in the real life environment, especially within the business context, it varies slightly. And why do I say this? I say this because we need to remember that processing of personal data does not only reside in the digital space. Data protection applies to the processing of personal information, even in the physical realm, as long as it is an organized processing aside from personal use, okay? So even if you have a filing cabinet, we know that in our government institutions, a lot of those documents are still being held in a manual kind of folder. And so that's one thing I would say. So we're very tempted sometimes to look straight to IT security and ignore any other sort of processing and what we need to be doing. The second thing I want to sort of emphasize here is that there would probably be two ways I would broadly define data breach management: an organizational approach and a technical approach. Organizationally speaking, there are certain things that the NDPA and in fact all privacy laws, because they mirror each other so closely, require. That would be notifying the regulator, notifying the data subject, issuing a public statement in some cases, remediating that breach, and then keeping a register of those breaches and how you've investigated them, okay, in adding to that accountability principle. But at the same time, in the technical sense, you are required to, what they say, keep technical and organizational measures. That could involve, training, carrying out training, retaining specialist kind of talent, engaging a lawyer to kind of claw back any stolen materials or any stolen personal information, getting white hat hackers and cybersecurity operations professionals. So for me, there's a multitude or a cocktail of activities that we must do. But why do we do all these things? Because every data protection law, we have to remember, is based on the removal or the mitigation of risk. And these risks are very broad. They could spread from risk being harm to the data subjects, to organizational risk where there's a business disruption, etc. So when we look at the materials around this subject, you read the books and you read the articles, generally speaking, you will find that it's very it's in the best interest of many organizations to marry your privacy and data protection breach management with your IT risk management. Yeah. or your information security risk management. And that's because sometimes in mitigating those risks, they don't always speak the same language. Strictly speaking, we know what personal data is: name, address, etc. Sensitive personal data being religion, sexual orientation, and information of that nature. But within an organization, you may find that information security has classified its personal data separately into sensitive, confidential, classified, public. And in that sensitive categorization, you could find financial data there, minutes and business secrets, formulas, etc. So broadly speaking, you want to kind of take a very broad look at things, but then also to kind of have a very clear checklist of what needs to be done, both by a privacy function and in collaboration with other functions. So for me, that's generally how I view the topic, and I think I'm looking forward to reading and to listening through the presentations from the mentees.
Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you. Once again, a huge welcome to all our mentors on today's call and to all our mentees here. I think for now, two of our other mentors are not on the call at the moment. Mr. Manuel is not here yet, and Mr. Solomon. So we'll kick off with the presentations from our mentees. Group one, please, if you're ready for your presentation, kindly take off your presentation. If there's a backup presenter, please, in the event where your presenter is unable to continue the presentation, kindly step up and take off with the presentation. So over to group one with their presentation, please. Group one presenter. Okay, is there a backup for the presenter in the event where okay, while we wait to ascertain from group one, can we have group two, please? Are our mentees on this call? I can see some mentees here. Hello, Victoria.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm the presenter.
Hello, good evening.
I'm the presenter for group.
For group what?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Two.
Okay, thank you so much, Victoria.
All right.
Please carry on with your presentation. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen. Please, I'm sorry, I'll be, let me just. Hello, can you see my
Not yet. No, we can't see your screen. And also, we can barely hear you. I think we're having some network interference.
Okay.
Hello, Victoria. Can you hear me, please? Hello, Victoria. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I think we have some.
Hello?
Yes, okay, that's better now. That's clear. So sorry, I know that the network this period has been really going on a frenzy of its own. Okay, is there a backup presenter for group 2, please? Seems Victoria has some issues with her network.
Hello, I'm for group 1, backup presenter for group 1.
Okay, so while Victoria gets it sorted, Abby, please take over. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, sirs. Good evening, ma. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, please,
Okay,
go ahead.
so I'm JIIPCCMIP best, and for group 1, we're speaking on data management, understanding data breaches and their impacts. So data breach simply refers to an unauthorized access. That's, for instance, where it's to have a sanction, trade secret of an individual, which is a data subject, or an institution will be accessed and used for other means. So basically, this presentation deals with the management of this data breach. So data breach entails the process of handling and mitigating these effects when it occurs. So it deals with the steps, the processes, that's by identifying the effect, the breach, how it was assessed, the impact, and then notifying the affected parties and implementing measures that can ensure that sorry for that break in transmission. Hello.
We can hear you.
Okay, sorry for that break. So I was saying that data breach management involves all the steps that are taken to ensure that future breaches are prevented. So we have common methods of data breach, which could be, we have denial of service, where the data is breached. The cyber criminal sends junk messages that stops you from accessing your information. So you can also have payment card schema. So for instance, there are sometimes when you leave, criminals go back and they scheme the terminal itself, where they get your information and they use it for other purposes. So you also have privilege misuse. These are intentional actions carried out by company insiders. So employees or employees of an organization who are privileged to have information of the company, they misuse it because they already have privileges. So for instance, you have under the cybercrime, you have unlawful access, someone that has that already unauthorized access, someone that already has the privilege to use certain information goes ahead to misuse it. So that's what we call privilege misuse. So we also have lost and stolen assets. So when your phone is stolen, either incidentally or you misplace it, you discover that your data can be breached when the criminal accesses information that's confidential information that are there. So for instance, where the phone has a fingerprint or a password, they have a way to bypass that part and get your information. So your data becomes breached and you are misused by these persons. And some other times where you click on some links, you realize that it leads to other things that causes data breach. You could have unintentionally or intentionally, okay, let's say for instance, you placed your card details to purchase some things online, and in the course of time, you've forgotten that your card details have been there, and you click a link unknowingly to you, your data is breached and information about you is spread across, or anything can happen, and maybe even your pictures are shared or they are used to perpetrate crimes. So the impact of data breach, I already mentioned it while speaking on the common methods of breach. What's the impact? There are financial consequences, reputational damages, you have cost of having to retrieve your information, you have personal and psychological effects. So for instance, you have some pictures, so we call them private pictures, that you believe that they are for your eyes only. And when your data becomes breached, your information is not spread online and people start saying, oh, wow, this is what this person does. Even trade secrets are spread around and you are like, I cannot take this anymore. From there, you become depressed and you commit suicide, and that's that. So you have personal and psychological effects. You have legal and regulatory effects. So for employees that have the privilege to use information and they misuse it, forgetting about the clauses contracts that talks about non-disclosure and information, they breach data, they have legal actions that are brought against them. So where there is a data breach, the impacts, you have legal and regulatory effects. So in Nigeria, under the NDPR, if a breach occurs, the data controller must promptly notify the NICTA and the affected individuals within 72 hours. So it is a requirement that where if it's data subjects information that has been breached, the data controller must inform this person within this specified time so that steps that could be taken are taken as soon as practicable. So we also have identity theft. So where your data is breached, let's say for instance, your Facebook account, someone takes your picture, uses your name to scam your friends and your loved ones, and identity has been stolen. And oftentimes they don't even believe that you're not the one that is sending the message. Everybody tags you as a criminal. So you have fraud and unauthorized access, you have operational disruption, you even have intellectual property theft. So let's say for instance, like Mr. Ridwan, that is a tech guru, if his laptop, if the data is breached, there's some information that are peculiar to just him, and somebody uses it, and let's say for instance that data is not trademarked or there's no copyright, it goes to another person, his intellectual property has been stolen, and it becomes something that affects his business, his career, and everything. He sees that, oh, my idea has been taken by someone else. But the fact that it was not registered, what can he do? So we also have future vulnerability. So when your data has been breached, when your phone or your email has been breached and someone already has an access to it, in the future, there's a likelihood that same thing can happen because they have some particulars that they can access. Sorry about that. So you also have loss of business opportunities. So like I said, when your data is breached and your identity is stolen, people would tag you as a criminal and they wouldn't want to give you any job. They'll be like, is it not that person that sent me a message to send 40,000 naira the other day and I did that and my money is lost? That kind of situation. So that's what happens. Those are impacts of data breach. So how can we mitigate these impacts? So it could be an individual basis on an individual level. It could be at the organizational level. So for an individual, you have these two-factor verification. You do that. Then for the organization, they deploy and immediately receive a note on database that's breach. Deploy a task force to this. Is about the cybersecurity response. When situations like this occur, they can address the issue and so secure your future to secure do attack. So you can
I don't know.
phone, you can
is it just me
so
or
my
hello, Abby?
I was having a
Hello. Can we hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you, but it seems she's no longer on call.
Okay, I think she's back, but because I was about to ask if I was the only one experiencing the network glitch in her communication. Yes, there's really bad network.
Sorry.
Okay, I think you're better now. Carry on, please. Although you might still need to round off.
Yeah, I'm almost done. So you have to restrict the access to your information on your device. Then communicate the incident with your company. If you're an employee and you discover that your information, your data has been breached, you escalate the issue, report to the appropriate authorities. So NITDA is the primary regulatory authority responsible for regulating information technology in Nigeria. That's NITDA. And we have the regulation that regulates this body, which is the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation. Then we have NCC, because when we talk about privacy and its intricacies, we have technology in it. So NCC also comes in to ensure that the telecommunication sector and everything that involves it are properly regulated, so that when data breaches occurs, they can also address the issue. So case study on data breach and its impact. So in 2017, Equifax faced so many lawsuits and actions were taken against them for personal data that were breached, and this led to discussions on their legal obligations. So an institution is expected to have data protection policies and how they respond to this, because like we saw in the NDPA, that when this occurs, the data controller is called upon to come and address the issue. So Facebook also had an issue in 2018. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much, FB. That was a beautiful one. Nicely done. Sincerely. Your time was up a long time ago, but just enjoyed listening to you speak. That showed some in-depth knowledge. And you're not even the main presenter. That was a nice job. I'm sure that our mentors will be so proud of that presentation. Although I see your group mentioned the NDPR, and you finally mentioned the Act. I was looking forward to seeing that in your list of authorities. Anyway, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. A good one from you. You're welcome. Okay, is group 2 ready? Victoria, are you good to go now? Or is there a backup presenter for group 2 now? Okay, I don't think Victoria is on the call anymore. Group 2, is there a backup presenter, please? Okay, in the absence of any response from the group 2 mentees, I think we'll need to go back to our mentors at this point to get their feedbacks on the presentation as well as more in-depth on our topic for today. If you will permit me, I think I want to start off with Mrs. Sandra A.K. Mrs. Sandra, back to you. So what's your thought on the presentation? And let's get more insights from you with regards to the topic I'm discussed today.
Okay, thank you very much. Group 1 was the one that presented, if I'm very correct. First of all, please. I'm not really sure why the mentees seem not to be so ready for this. I thought this was something they all prepared and put together. So it would be nice if, we saw some more level of readiness amongst the mentees. Then speaking about the presentation by the representative for Group 1, I would say that, well, she did a good job in identifying some different kinds of data breach incidents. She even gave some examples of some data breaches that have happened in some organizations, which I thought was good. But if I was going to make some comments, like you rightly mentioned, I was looking forward to hearing things from the new Nigerian Data Protection Act. And she kept making reference to the NDPR, even though the NDPR is actually still enforceable. But we have an act now, and we have new provisions in the act. So I was looking forward to hearing it. I was also looking forward to hearing the new commission, that's Nigerian Data Protection Commission. She kept making mention to me that, actually, in fact, even before the NDPC came into being by virtue of the NDPA, NIDA actually kind of in collaboration with, I think it was even the former president, carved out an agency called the Nigerian Data Protection Bureau for the primary purpose of addressing issues relating to data privacy and protection. They were formally handling it, but they had to create that agency because, of course, NIDA does a whole lot of things relating to information technology and all that. So they just wanted, that particular body to just really focus on data privacy and protection and all that there is. And when the act came into being, the NDPC, of course, took over the operations of the NDPB. That's the bureau. So I was looking forward to hearing that, but I didn't hear that. Probably maybe for some reason this was left out. I'm not pretty sure. Then also she made mention of the role of the NCC, which I thought was also good because the NCC has a cybersecurity team, which basically helps MNOs. When I say MNO, I mean like mobile network operators or licensees or companies under, holding a communication license, which of course come under the purview of the NCC. The NCC publishes occasionally the list of, harmful applications, and different kinds of new kinds of viruses or thereabouts, that organizations should desist from, downloading or incorporating in the IT infrastructure because of maybe reports of the activities of cyber criminals, and thereabouts. So the mention of the NCC, I thought was good. I think I'll just leave the floor now to other mentees to talk about. There's some things I probably will also, I'd like to also highlight. For example, how to, mitigate a data breach, or let me say when a data breach occurs, what to do next. First of all, if I'm going to speak from the standpoint of, an organization here now, if you are working in an organization, for example, and then you discover that, oh, my organization right now has just suffered a data breach incident, what should I do? The first thing, I would do, different strokes for different folks. I'm sure if you ask every mentor here, they probably have their strategy on how to address a data breach incident. I don't know how many minutes I have. Please just let me know if I'm talking for too long, please. But for me, like I kind of mapped out about 5 steps, that an organization can take when faced with a data breach incident. And the first one, for me would be to contact or report to your data protection officer. So within every organization, right, and also by virtue of data protection law and regulation, organizations are ought to appoint a data protection officer. Do you understand? If you don't have one appointed yet, maybe you can report to the head of the IT or maybe the senior management immediately that occurs. And then the next thing is to take a record of the breach incident in your data breach register. You record it there. You're supposed to have a data breach register where you register all the incidents that happen, within your organization. Then, of course, if there's some notification requirements, which there is, by virtue of our law, particularly where it involves high risk to the data subjects involved, you ought to notify the regulatory bodies within the 72-hour timeline. And then if it involves a high risk that could affect the rights and freedom of the data subjects, the organization needs to notify the data subject immediately, because of course this is now like a something that could affect their rights or freedom. And then also then they can now, after this third step, they can now go ahead and commence remediation actions to remedy the effect of the breach and prevent future occurrences. They can go ahead and now begin to, close all the gaps, all the vulnerabilities that they discovered in their systems, and go ahead and implement new technical measures, new organizational measures. So there's a difference between a technical and organizational measure. Technical measures involve you maybe downloading new kinds of maybe security softwares, installing it in your IT infrastructure to help you, prevent a reoccurrence of that kind of breach. Then when it comes to organizational measure, that involves you, maybe if one of the mentors rightly said, for non-electronic data, like maybe hard copies of your data, now you know you need to restrict access to those kind of information. They should be locked in a safe cabinet with restricted, access. Make sure you implement your access use policy and all the different kinds of remedial actions that you ought to take to remedy that incident. Then also finally, I would say conduct trainings, because at this instance, a data breach occurred, then it means that something that somebody was supposed to do, they didn't do it, or maybe something that they overlooked or something like that. So training should now be conducted. The DPO within the organization can conduct these trainings, and the DPO is not well trained, then they can employ someone external to do this. And for your company, if you're working in a company and then this is now in the news everywhere that you suffered a data breach incident, then you can now begin to rebuild goodwill, because of course this news has probably affected your brand reputation. Then you can go ahead and start telling the public, oh, you've taken several steps, and all the different publicity, media rounds that you need to do to help build back your the goodwill that probably has been tarnished by the incident. So I don't know, I think I spoke for so long, but my apologies to other mentors, but I think I'll just stop here so that I don't just go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sandra. Thank you Thank you. I was jotting down a lot of things from that. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'll move on now to Mr. Ridwan to also get his thoughts on the presentation and also his insight on topic or further insight on the topic on discussed today. Mr. Ridwan, over to you, please, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Sandra has actually done a great analysis of the presentation by Group 1. So the only thing I wanted to add is, to put things in the proper perspective as regards the actual provisions of law that's stipulated, that's clause that was stated by Group 1, by presenter of Group 1. And I believe the provision she was actually referring to can actually be found in the implementation framework of the NDPL, the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, because the NDPL does not actually does not specifically stipulate any provision as regards how to handle data breaches, as far as I know, and so that can actually be found in the implementation framework. And I was also surprised because we have that covered in the Nigeria Data Protection Act under, everything that has to do with data breach. I believe it's under section. I'm not sure if we can find some elements of data breaches in other sections, but I know you can get everything you need in under section 40 of the NDPA. And it's still, it's still related to what she mentioned in the sense that you need to inform the Data Protection Authority. That's the Nigeria Data Protection, the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, of any data breach incidents that has occurred in your organization. So that's the only thing I actually wanted to add in terms of the presentation. But then it was actually a good presentation, so good work. And I mean, something else to add is in terms of the presentation is also, the difference, making a kind of establishing a difference between when you have a personal, when you have a data breach that affects an individual and when you have a data breach that actually affects an organization. I think it is actually important for us to also differentiate the difference between those kind of data breaches because of the techniques or the measures you can actually adopt to either mitigate those incidents or to prevent them. Of course, we have a multi-factor authentication because we have individuals who actually making use of these information systems. But notwithstanding, we have different layers of security when it comes to you implementing security measures in an organization. So we have an example is multi-factor authentication. Of course, we know we have individuals when you have on your different accounts, social media accounts, you have different. You may have instead of you just having a password to access your profile, it's actually, I believe everybody here should actually have a multi-factor authentication enabled on their profile. That's the best way to do. And you also have this in organizations, but then we have different layers. We have more in-depth layers to protect the organization from attacks, from cybersecurity or security attacks generally. So we need to, differentiate these between individual data breaches and when it comes to organizational data breaches, so to say. And one other thing that I would say to round this up is differentiating between the before and after of a data breach when it comes to data breach management. Mrs. Sandra mentioned the importance of training. And when it comes to, because when we're talking about data breach, it actually brings, I'm not sure of which area that really brings cybersecurity and privacy. There might be, but then for now, I think it's one of the core areas that actually brings the field of privacy and cybersecurity close together. And And that's because when you're talking about data breaches, it's actually security incidents. It's most like not only security incidents. This might also come from the aspect of privacy. I mean, privacy as well. And when it comes to you managing data breaches, we have what you need to do before a data breach occurs and what you do after a data breach occurs. And I believe Mrs. Sandra has actually said a lot about what you need to do in terms of your reporting to the NDPC in terms of when it comes to Nigeria or the relevant data protection authority in any other jurisdiction. You informing, in the data subjects or individuals that have been affected, that their personal data has been affected, if it's going to pose a high risk to them and all those things. The what comes after the data breach is actually very, very important, because it's when you don't manage a data breach very well in terms of what you do after a data breach has occurred, it's very likely that what you're doing is trying to put more blame or put more blame, so to say, on yourself, on the organization, because you already have something you're trying to handle, something you're trying to manage, and then you're not handling it properly, which would kind of broaden the regulatory enforcement, so to say, or enforcement that might come from the data protection authority. And when it comes, so what I want to quickly talk about before I stop talking is what you need to do before a data breach occurs, which is actually the most important when it comes to you looking at the cybersecurity or the process of after a data breach has occurred. We have the first thing you actually need to do is the planning, so to say, where you train your employees on how to handle such incidents, and also how and the things that you actually need to put in place before the data breach occurs. So one of the things that is also important, which Ms. Sandra mentioned, is TOMS, that's technical and organizational measures. And I want to quickly talk about the technical measures, because when it comes to the enforcement authority or the data protection authority carrying out conducting an investigation on how the data breach occurred, if it is found that you don't have necessary technical and organizational measures in place, that's one of the ways that the enforcement could actually be broadened, so to say. And what I mean by this is that if you have specific measures or you have good measures in place before a data breach occurs, it's very likely that the fine that is actually going to be meted on that organization might be reduced if you were able to train your employees very well. You were able to you have different security or privacy policies in place, and you have those measures that ensures that the personal data of your customers are very well protected. Then it's likely that that's punishments, or the fine that's going to be meted on you is going to be reduced, so to say. So when it comes to technical measures, we see that we find so many organizations wanting in this aspect, and that actually has to do with a lot of measures which when I started during my introduction section, I talked about privacy engineering and privacy technology, and this has to do with, because when most times when a data breach occurs, it's actually as a result of the applications or the systems that customers are interfacing with, or the systems or the infrastructures that organizations has actually deployed for customers to interact with. So we don't really have human beings at every point in time being the one interfacing with customers. So organizations really need to ensure that their applications, their systems, their products are very well secured in terms of from the cybersecurity aspect and from the privacy aspect as well. And this has to do with you ensuring that you have all the provisions in the privacy law, being implemented, in your organization in terms of the technical aspects but one thing that we don't really have, especially in Nigeria or in Africa generally, is the technical aspects in terms of we having the regulatory body trying to see how they can help organizations to to improve this area of securing their customers' personal data. And what we could actually do, what I always encourage, or what I always advise, is for us to look at other jurisdictions, how they're doing it, especially in the EU. We have different guidelines. We have, even aside from the EU, we have different international standards and frameworks that organizations could actually adopt and implement in their organizations, especially in terms of the technical aspects. And this would go a long way to reduce the occurrence of data breach incidents. And lastly, to quickly talk about some privacy technology and engineering, is that because I mentioned from the beginning that there's a way we could, since we can't completely avoid data breaches, there's a way we could actually, of course, it's not that if you're actually implementing these strategies, these methods or techniques, it will of course reduce the occurrences of these kind of incidents, of security incidents. And on the other hand, it's also going to mitigate the consequences. We've had of so many consequences or implications from representer, and these consequences would actually be reduced to the nearest minimum. And what we could actually do is we could actually do this through privacy engineering, or ensuring that we have privacy technologies in place. So going to privacy engineering, what we could actually do, we have privacy engineering, and then we have something called PETs, privacy enhancing technologies. And just to kind of take us back, the reason I'm talking about this is actually when I started talking about some terms, technical and organizational measures, that is actually that is required for organizations to to protect their customers and personal data. So when you have PET is a type of technical measures that can actually be put in place in an organization. So when you have privacy enhancing technologies, which means you're trying to protect, I'll give some examples of privacy enhancing technologies. We have technologies that could anonymize your personal data sets in the sense that some examples are differential privacy. We have multi-party computation and the likes. So what these technologies do sometimes is actually to hide the personal data, what makes the data of the customer to be personally, to be identifiable, to be personally identifiable, to hide those elements, so that the result of this is that when there's a data breach and you have those PETs being applied to your customer's personal data, when there's a data breach, those data sets might be, or they will actually be less useful for the cyber attackers. So it will be less useful for the hackers, because when you have to an extent anonymized the data sets, then those data sets won't be personally identifiable. And another thing I like to use to describe this is also that when you have the identified, because the process of doing this is actually de-identifying the personal data. So when you have the identified personal data, what it means is that you've taken that personal data out of the purview. You've taken the processing of that personal data out of the purview of privacy laws, in the sense that privacy laws only covers data that can be linked to a person. But then if you remove those personally identifiable information, then it means those elements that makes an information or a data to be personally identified, then you have kind of, to an extent, even though we have some other issues that we might talk about, when it comes to pets, but then I also want to take much of our time due to, since we are not really talking about privacy engineering mechanisms or privacy engineering methodologies. We are talking about data breaches management, and one of the ways we could actually do this is going back to the technical measures that we can actually implement to mitigate the consequences of data breaches. I'm sorry I've spoken for a very long time, and I hope I've been able to pass them some values to the mentees.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ridwan. Thank you so much. Indeed, you've actually passed some amazing knowledge. Thank you so much. We're so grateful for that insight. Also, for pointing out to our mentees the need for us to be updated with the laws, especially when stating them out, and be really careful. When it comes to law, most of the time you must be spot on with the law and also its application. Okay, while we're having Mr. Ridwan speak, it says the G in senior daddy. Our daddy joined the call. A big welcome to you, Mr. Solomon Okedara. It's really nice having you join us, sir. Welcome to the session. How are you doing, sir?
Hello.
Hello, sir. We can hear you. How are you doing?
I'm great. Of course, I think I gave you a response to that welcome. I said I'm not the senior daddy. I'm the friend to the senior daddy. So I think Michael should actually join it. Maybe Michael is the manager to the senior daddy.
Senior daddy.
Okay, so guys,
it's really nice.
And let me say good evening again. And so over to you, Gustav. Let's.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so before we listen to Mr. Matthews' take on the presentation as well as give his insights further, we'd like to quickly take our pictures. So mentees, now we need to turn on those cameras. Let's have our picture time quickly so we can go on back to back. Good thing we still have some good time. Then after Mr. Matthew gives his insight, group 2 will take their presentation. I think Victoria is ready to present. Then we hear from Mr. Solomon. So, ladies and gentlemen, kindly turn on your cameras for us to have our picture time. Fantastic. Okay, I see our cameras are coming on. And also throw a beautiful smile on your face. Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Dennis. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, quickly we'll move over to Mr. Matthew. Let's get his insight on representations as well as further elaborations on this topic of discourse for today. Over to you, Mr. Matthew, please.
Thanks, God's love. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Good. I think this was a really good presentation. Spot on, if you ask me. Some really, really well-researched points here. Just initial comments on the face of it. Visually speaking, I see what you guys were going for presentation-wise, but the slides, to me, they look very busy. The text is very small and white. And then the background has a lot of, like they've tried to put in the circuit boards and some nice visuals, but sometimes, it makes it very difficult, especially because I've noticed so many of us are looking on the phone. It would be nice to have a good presentation with some minor points, some bold, big letters, just so that you're able to communicate effectively, so that if someone is looking at it, they don't really have to squint. That said, to me, still a really, really great presentation. I just wanted to take a minute and say that in the very first point there, in the definition of a data breach, you guys are close, but the NDPA, to my understanding, has already a definition of what a personal data breach is. And so to compare the wording there, I would read it out. It means a breach of security of a data controller or data processor leading to or likely to lead to the accidental or unlawful destruction, loss, alteration, unauthorized disclosure of or access to personal data transmitted, stored, or otherwise processed. And with that, you can kind of begin to see how a data breach really ties into some of the data subject rights and the privacy principles that you have under the NDPA. So everything else I think is really good. I think also what I picked up, I'm not really sure the scope that the mentees were given, because it seems to me like we focused solely on the actions being taken after a breach has occurred, or a personal data breach has occurred, or an incident. It's very difficult I mean, it's well within your rights, obviously, as JIIPC, but because of how we process, or as the NDPA says, accessed, what does it say, transmitted, stored, or otherwise processed. Because of the way personal data is processed, it's very difficult to separate breach management as a standalone action, because so many things that you do before a breach happens affect the outcome, or can mitigate mitigate the effects of the breach. So I can obviously understand the restrictions. It's a very wide topic, but maybe just to add one or two things, very scrolling quickly down to mitigation of a data breach. One thing I would say is remediation would be a really good point to add there. I know you tried to address it by eliminating vulnerabilities, but remediation is essentially what you touched on under impact or consequences of a data breach. Remediation means restoring the rights of the data subjects, continuing business, continuing to process the personal data in a compliant way, basically restoring the processing back to the original and lawful state before the breach occurred. Another good thing here would be the post-incident review, which I can see you've got deploying a task force. A big part of what that task force would probably be wanting to do after a data breach is to review what happened, so that you can feed that back into your organization, company, so that it doesn't happen again. You can understand, identify maybe some of the causes of the breach, the impact it's had, what you could have done better. And then, of course, you've talked about reporting. Something I think really, really bears mentioning here, you saw from the definition I read out of a data breach, is controller and processor. So having a data processing agreement in place can really help to mitigate the impact of a data breach, because the NDPA obviously gives two different roles, which is controller and processor. And generally speaking, in privacy and data protection, from a legal standpoint, you always want to be thinking about your role as a controller or a processor, because there's an overall obligation, a higher overall obligation on data controllers vis-a-vis processors. And it's very possible within a data processing agreement to instruct data processors and also to limit their liability through limitation clauses, to make it very clear how you want the personal data to be handled and how secure, what kind of protection measures you want in place, your atoms, right? And so when it comes down to it, let's say you're issued a fine or you're sued, because the NDP obviously gives civil remediation, you're able to say, look, under this contract, you promised us that you wouldn't process this, you would anonymize the data for us. And so you need to indemnify us at the end of the day. Also, having data privacy impact assessments is something that you probably would do before a breach occurs, But then at the end of it, it mitigates the effects of a data breach because you're able to identify some of the open risks, some of the measures you have in place, and it acts as what we call a paper shield when the regulator comes calling, right? Someone has made it's a well-publicized breach, someone has made a complaint, you're able to say, hey, we actually looked through this and we mitigated everything as much as possible, as opposed to the consequence of that, which we are standing there with dirt on your hands, and they ask you, okay, you deployed this system to capture people's personal data for your app. How did you protect it? Say, we don't know. We had some discussions, but we have no evidence. So they'll definitely fine you more, right? And also having the policies and procedures in place. I think one of the other mentors talked about, it must have been Ridwan. Having a policy, a data breach policy, or even better, a data breach playbook is something that could really be beneficial to you as an organization and ultimately mitigate that risk. So with those few points, I think for me, stellar presentation. I like the theme. I could easily understand where your head is at. You've given us some really good examples, albeit more from the United States, but I guess those are the breaches that have more publicity. And kudos to the mentees. Over to you, God's love.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Indeed, kudos. That's one presentation I would not forget in a hurry. Evie, once again, a great job to you. Okay, so before we hear from Mr. Solomon, the G of our senior daddy, we'd like to hear from group 2. Victoria is ready to proceed. Hello, Victoria. Can you carry on with your presentation now? Do not forget it's 7 minutes, but time is fast spent, so you have to be really brisk with it. So over to you, Victoria, please.
Good evening, everybody. Victoria, so can you hear me?
The network is still having so much interference.
Hello.
Hello, Victoria. We can hear you, but I think there's still so much interference from your network.
Okay. All right. I'm sharing my screen now.
While your screen is sharing, I think you could just carry on so that you have more time to spare.
It's a problem. I think I'll just I'm having network issues. I'm having a problem with screen. Is that okay?
I think that's fine, although we still having issues hearing you clearly. Please, is there a backup presenter for group 2 so we could put Victoria out of this misery with network at the moment? Is there a backup presenter for group 2? Okay, so Victoria, I'm so sorry. In the absence of any backup presenter and with the issue of network right now, it's going to be a hulabaloo and a lot of issues if we try to have that presentation with the bad network interference. I think we might have to just move along. Really sorry about that. There's some bad network issue in the country at the moment. Hopefully our network providers will look into this, but our hearts are with you because we know you're about to give a stellar presentation and our mentors have seen your slides. So on that already, kudos and good job. Okay, having said that, I want to quickly move to Mr. Solomon Okedera to give us his opening as well as his insights on the topic for discuss today. Thank you so much, Mr. Solomon. The floor is yours now, sir. Welcome again. Hello, Mr. Solomon. Okay. Can we hear me, please? I want to be sure that I'm still audible.
Yes, we can.
Okay, then. No problem. I think Mr. Solomon is not around at the moment. We'll quickly move into questions from our mentees. Let me put that up. Please, just to confirm, do we still have Mrs. Sandra on the call? Do we still have Mr. Ridwan on the call? And do we still have Mr. Matthew on the call, please?
Yes, yes, I'm still on the call.
Okay, thank you so much for
Yes,
staying on.
I'm here as well.
Okay, thank you for staying until this time. I believe in no time we'll get to hear from Mr. Solomon as well. Okay, thank you, Mr. Matthew. So I want to open up with the first question. I'll throw it out to the mentors. Anyone who wants to jump on it, you can jump on it. If anyone has more in-depth or more insight after a mentor has spoken, I think we have some time to handle that. So the first question reads from our mentees: how does the NDPA and the NDPR address reporting and notification requirements for data breaches? How does the NDPA and the NDPR address reporting and notification requirements for data breaches? I think I'll start with Mrs. Sandra on this. Hello, Mrs. Sandra, over to you, please.
Okay, I thought you want to start with a male this time around, given that I've been starting well.
No, there's no male or female here.
But it's actually fine by me. Well, if you go to the Nigerian Data Protection Act, I think particularly section 40, subsection 1, okay, section 41 to 1, oh, sorry, section 40, subsection 2, rather. It says specifically that a data controller shall, within 72 hours of becoming aware of a breach, which is likely to result in a risk to the rights and freedoms of individuals, notify the commission of the breach, and where feasible, describe the nature of the personal data breach, including the categories and approximate numbers of data subjects and personal data records concerned. Involved. He also says in section 3, that's subsection 3, that where a personal data breach is likely to result in a high risk to the rights and freedoms of the data subject, the data controller shall immediately communicate the personal data breach to the data subject in plain and clear language. Then he goes on about what they should include, when communicating, the notification, requirement to data subject. So I hope that answers the question, because this has already been overflowed during the course of our presentations today. So
yes, it has.
And this.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for going so straight to the point with that. And I agree with you that it's been overflowed today during the questions, during the session. I know that's one particular topic that has really been, or question that have really been handled so well, how to quickly handle data breaches and the effect of the reporting and notification. Okay, question 1B, the potential, sorry again, thank you so much, Mrs. Sandra, for that answer. Thank you so much. So 1B question reads, the potential consequences for organizations that fail to follow best practices in data breach management. So I think that question should be, how does the NDP and NDPR address the potential consequences for organizations that fail to follow best practices in data breach management? So Itamar, I want to come to Mr. Ridwan. Let's get your insight on this, please.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I believe that we've also talked about these. We've talked about the best practices a lot of times for to kind of avoid data breaches, and and I think I remember also saying that the not only the best practices, but then we have the best practices actually. It consists of so many different different things. It could be international standards. It could be the set of mechanisms or measures from the NDP or any other privacy laws. So, but then to answer the question directly is that these best practices are also we shouldn't think that they are not considered when it comes to when we have a data breach. When you report a data breach to the Data Protection Authority, to the NDPC, or to the NDPC, it is actually the measures that you've taken, that you've put in place to ensure that your customers' data, your customers' personal data are protected, are actually considered to kind of determine the kind of punishment or the kind of penalty or fine that is actually going to be that's going to be meted out on an organization. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is that the best practice, if an organization has implemented or has taken into consideration the best practices to protect their personal their customers' personal data, this is actually going to be considered when it's the NDP and the NDPR has actually put this as considered this in terms of when the Data Protection Authority is looking at how it is when he's investigating how a data breach occurred. So I'll just summarize in terms of it is actually very important to put all these things that's all the mentors and I have said and initially in place when an organization is looking at at implementing a privacy or a cybersecurity program. So I hope I've been able to answer that question.
Okay, Ms. Ridwan, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful again. Thank you. So Ms. Solomon is on the course back up with us. So Solomon, the floor is yours. Let's get your insight and your lecture on today's topic before we go into the other questions we have. Mentees, please do not forget, if you have live questions, I see the questions already dropping. If you have live questions, you can always signify and then you unmute to call you up to unmute and ask a question live, or you can just type a question in the chat box. So get those questions ready. We still have one question from the mentees, but get questions ready. After Mr. Solomon, we'll get more questions and have more time. Mr. Solomon, over to you, sir. Welcome again.
Okay, thank you so much, Gottlob. Once again, glad to be here again this evening. And let me say thank you for to the two groups for your well-researched presentations. And I think I'm not going to have very detailed or quite laborious analysis or comments this evening. I'll keep it as short as possible. Now, but the first thing is that, so I think I realized that the mentees have actually taken the advice, of striving as much as possible to reflect case laws in their work, which I think it's a commendable one. But then I need to quickly point out that that's a very, very important decision that I could not see in the two presentations. In fact, that decision has a sister and administrative decision. It has both a judicial decision and administrative decision. So one was a decision of the court. The other one was a decision of NIST. So the judicial decision is the case of Digital Rights Lawyers Initiative versus Lagos State Inland Revenue Service. In that particular case, what is called LRS data base was hacked, or let me say, it was reportedly hacked. And when that happened, people's personal data, were all over the place. I mean, I'm actually talking about the taxpayers, resident in Lagos. They got their phone numbers, their email address, their contact address, their gender. I mean, almost every personal data, provided by those data subjects to LRS and data controllers, our data controllers. So at the end of the day, we went to court, and of course, challenging that data. And of course, the courts, there was a decision of the court, and NITs that also stepped. And I think NITs actually imposed a fine of 1 million naira or 10 million naira. I can't recall. But so, like I said, it was a case, with two decisions, both judicial decisions and administrative decisions. And so I observed that I think group 2, most of which of the groups, I think one group cited case law, the other group did not cite the case law. So the other group that didn't cite the case law now cited some administrative decision. Yes, for the purpose of our understanding, and for those who are not experts like you guys, now the administrative decisions are also still verified because they, in their way, help us understand the principles how they have been applied. But then, as lawyers, it's also important for us to try and strive as much as possible to lay hands on case law if they are available on such something. Then I think another thing I would love to comment on. Yes, you guys were quite detailed in your presentations. And once again, I say well done, and thank you for enriching our knowledge. But I think you guys would have actually gone a little bit, further and take us some greater mileage if you have actually taken us into the position of data protection impact assessment, which it's one of the ways when a data controller observes that there's a likelihood of high risk to the interest, to the rights and freedom of natural persons when a data processing activity is actually to be undertaken. So one of the things, of course, a DPIA does is that it helps you as a data controller identify the possible risk, and of course, then in what form could they actually occur? And of course, how can they be mitigated in this? Which also we should know again that yes, sometimes after you have actually conducted some of the finest, most detailed, most comprehensive DPI, your DPI results, when you have done conducting, now what you have will still show you that look, there's still a likelihood of some high risk to rights and freedom of natural person who are your data subject in the process. So in that case, of course, NDPA says, look, you need to, communicate to NDPC so that NDPC advises you for you, particularly when in a situation that you still have to proceed to process such data. Now, in other jurisdictions, some of the laws are silent about that. While in some other jurisdictions, believe that when you see that there will still be a election, you may have to halt the process. But I think if you have been able to let us see that, and views are expressed, concerns are raised, then of course you would have actually done more than you have done now on enriching a knowledge on the subject of data breach management. But aside all of that, let me once again say, well done, guys. You guys actually did a good job. Thank you. So, Gustavo, I will be waiting on the sideline for questions and reactions, comments, and all of that. I hope you can hear me. Hello?
Okay, I think maybe Mr. Godslove is having a bit of network issue, but regardless of that, we'll still be going on. And okay, we'll be moving on to our questions, to more questions on the chat box. And we'll be directing this question to Mr. Matthew to help us with it. The question goes, can an organization be held liable for a data breach which occurred due to the lack of training and awareness of his employees? If yes, to what extent? Mr. Matthew, please, can you help us with the questions?
I'll caveat this by saying, obviously, I'm not a qualified Nigerian lawyer. In my perusal of the NDPA, I don't see it explicitly mentioned as you do under the GDPR. So under the GDPR in Article 28, processors need to make sure that staff who handle personal data have the right level of training or are subject to confidentiality, etc., or something along those lines. I don't see the same thing under the NDPA. So for me, what I think would happen would probably be if an organization was able to prove that part of the technical and organizational measures that are talked about included having staff that are appropriately trained, or indeed there's a direct link between the data breach and the staff not having the appropriate level of training, then yes, I don't see why that claim would not be successful. Indeed, we know that at least in Europe, in the last year, the highest number of data breaches have been caused by human error. It's the biggest cause of data breaches, aside from your cybersecurity attacks, aside from your breakdown in policy, human error, plain and simple. Somebody prints something from the printer, they forget to collect it, they go home. Somebody's briefcase is stolen on the train, somebody puts a secure flash drive or sends the wrong email to the wrong person in most cases. That's the biggest error. So if there's a direct link, then I think there's a very strong case for liability. In this particular instance, I'm not really sure whether the question is referring to civil liability or regulatory liability in terms of fines and sanctions by the regulator. So civilly, yes, I definitely can see that. As long as there's a direct link between those two, I don't see why not.
Okay, sir, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, my Zoom was acting up. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, can I quickly add that, to the contribution?
Go ahead. Go ahead, please, ma'am.
Okay, so the Nigerian Data Protection Act, actually has a provision in Section 53, Subsection 2, where it holds data controllers, vicariously liable for the acts or omissions of its agents or employees, insofar as the acts or omissions relate to his business. So in this case now, of course, the act also says, or even the NDPR even says that a data controller ought to hold regular capacity building sessions for those within those processing data controlled by it, or let me just say employees in this case, for example. So yes, a data controller will be vicariously liable for the actions or the omissions of his agents. And in this case now, so even if the breach happened because of one action by an employee, the data controller will be held accountable for such. And also it is expected that the data controller ought to hold some capacity building sessions or some training sessions for its employees so that they know what to do when it comes to data breach management or any of these things. So yes, just to add to what I think Mr. Machi had said, an organization can be held liable for data breach that occurs due to these deficiencies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Because I was also thinking that even without the act, normally the thought of vicarious liability, if someone is an agent of a principal, where you commit an act or omission, your principal would most likely be liable for that, vicariously be liable for that act or omission. Thank you so much for adding to that. Okay, we have a live question here, and I'll throw this one to Mr. Solomon, please. Mentees, if you have more questions, kindly send them to the chat box so we can address all this. The mentors are here, make good use of this time, because this is one part where you get to meet over the years if you should become a DPO. Okay, Mr. Solomon, sorry, the question reads, given that the government also operates as a data controller, looking at NIN, the NIN, BVN, etc., how does the data protection legal framework in Nigeria apply in mandating data breach management? For context, a breach in the cause communications surveillance by the government. I don't know if you got that, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, sir.
Okay, so, well, clearly, I'm not sure the way this question is structured, gives it the intended clarity, particularly with the last sentence, that says, for context, a breach in the course of the course communication. I really don't know whether it means the course of communication. Something I really don't know what the intent of the person asking the question is. Well, let me take it as much as I can make sense of it. Now, the question goes by saying, given the government also operates as a data controller. Yes, we have public data controllers and private data controllers. So, okay, so I think that's yes, in the course of communication surveillance. Okay, so now the truth is, all the legal frameworks we have would relate and govern the data breach management, whether as a private data controller or a public data controller. Now, one of the things I observe is oftentimes when we discuss the concept of data protection and of course the legal frameworks, now we tend to focus more on private data controllers. But I've said it over and over. You see, government is the biggest violator, whether intentional or negligent. Now, if you check so most of the cases filed by BRLI, which constitutes about 90% of cases on data protection against, they were against government agencies. Now, we actually had a particular case, which was incorporated consist of BRLI against Minister of the Industry, Trade and Investment. That case borders on violation of NDPR provisions by the Office of the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. So they have this particular where young enterprises. Now, the first thing is that we discovered that that portal that was actually to process personal data of millions of data subjects did not have privacy policy. Privacy policy did not exist on that website. I mean, that was alarming. So we now actually took the opportunity to reveal, to analyze the entire portal, of course, which was a data collection part. And we realized that there was serious, violation of the extant regulation, then NDPR. So we went to court that, look, the government should be the gatekeeper of people's rights in any society. So, but the same supposed gatekeeper is now a violator of those rights. Of course, the case lasted for about 2 years. And at the end of the day, we asked for 12 reliefs, and the court magnanimously granted all the 12 reliefs. And my Lord Justice Digda delivered a very robust judgment, making some fantastic judicial pronouncements that will form the foundation of our case law when it comes to data protection in Nigeria. So for me, I think this comes to the question of accountability to data protection legal frameworks. So my point here is this: our legal frameworks are expected to be status neutral, whether you are a public data controller or a private data controller. As I speak to you today, I have 12 cases in court against public data controllers in Nigeria. 12. Two of them are coming up 2 weeks. One is 16. Okay, 2 are coming up on 16th of November. So my point here is that I want to believe that what this question focuses on, it's exactly the measure of responsibility, whether the legal frameworks are status neutral or not. And like I said, the intended of the drafters of all our legal frameworks, NDPR, NDPA, Cybercrime Act, all of them are supposed to be status neutral, and their enforcement too. And to the very best of my experience, particularly the judicial enforcement of those statutes, frameworks, regulations, and code, a good number of our judges have actually been assuming a very impressive and positive posture. So for me, I think they are status neutral, and of course, the enforcers are expected to enforce them, regardless of who is involved.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I like how passionate he gets when he answers these questions. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have one more question from our mentees. I like this question so much because it's going into what we have, I think what's happening over time. So I'll throw this one, and I think each of the mentors can take their turns in responding to it before we have their final word for the day. Okay, the question reads, in trying to mitigate data breach, can artificial intelligence be used to bar systems that try to illegally access people's data? And are there provisions in our law to make that possible? Can AI help to bar or be used to bar systems illegally accessing people's data? And looking at our laws, the NDPA, the NDPR, are there parts of the law that is providing for such use of AI? So over to our mentees. Anyone willing to come first can go on, please. Okay, so maybe I'll just start my normal favorite. Hello, Mrs. Sandra. Hello, Mrs. Sandra, is she still here? Okay, Mr. Matthew.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so what's your take on that question?
Before I answer that question, maybe if I can just jump on the previous question by Francis.
Okay.
I think it's important when we say government, that's a very vague term. To me, the way I know the government, at least the executive and the judiciary works, is government operates through agencies, and each of the government bodies is an entity on its own. So for me, I think that all the government entities, whether it be Office of the President, Office of the Prime Minister, state parastatals, all those are considered controllers under the NDPA. And so they must have a legal basis to process the personal data. And in the context of mass surveillance, especially, the agency that's conducting the surveillance, you cannot tell me, say, for instance, the post office would have a legal basis to do mass surveillance, but definitely the police, the Office of the Inspector General of Police would have a legal basis to, carry out mass surveillance, right? So I think it all boils down to that, and it's very dangerous to put government as one thing when you're trying to think about specific things. In regards to Dennis's question about AI be used to bar systems that try to illegally access people's data, and are there provisions in a law that make that possible? I mean, I don't know if any African country has any specific laws on AI. I know there's an AI Act in somewhere in Brussels cooking up. I think AI is already in use. Even Google Maps is AI because it looks at the phone in your pocket, calculates the distance in real time about where you're going, the speed that your phone is moving, and then tells you you'll arrive at your destination in 32 minutes. That's artificial intelligence already. It's already being used in the financial sector. Companies like Proofpoint, who do cybersecurity, Viking Cloud, Sysnet. Those are companies that are already using AI to prevent illegal access. I think the thing, though, is responsible use of AI and preventing excessive violation of data subjects' rights in trying to bar illegal access to people's data. I don't think that there is a specific law, no. You'll probably fall under the appropriate technological and organizational measures umbrella that we use. We already know, I think the mentor's name is escaping me, but one of the first mentors already talked about what you call privacy enhancing technologies. Those privacy enhancing technologies, which employ myriad things, including machine learning. And again, using the blanket term artificial intelligence, very dangerous. Machine learning, large language models, data analysis, those are all under the umbrella of AI. So I think it's very important that as future lawyers, you begin to kind of dissect some of these things because they have a large bearing and not ask, generally speaking, blanket questions, okay? So AI already in use, there is a legal basis if there's sufficient mitigation of the degree of risk or potential harm it could cause to data subjects. And I don't see any reason why that should not be the case, especially in law enforcement, financial services, critical infrastructure, protecting, let's say, like oil refineries. For sure, they're using AI to track people's faces. The company which probably prints Nigeria's currency, for sure, the facial recognition is going into a database to look at you, even in airports, actually. If you've been in an airport recently and you have stepped into that thing that looks like a tube, where they tell you, put your hands to the side, put your feet to the side, and then it goes around you. What that thing is doing is looking at your body, it's scanning and looking for discrepancies in weight. So they might ask you, do you have something in your pocket? Because on the right side, it's showing it's heavier or it's bulging or it's hot in one particular area of the chest. So you lift your shirt. Are you carrying anything under your shirt? Oh, you're just sweating. Okay, proceed. So there is a legal basis for that. That's my take on it anyway.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Matthew. Thank you. Okay, over to you, Mrs. Solomon. Hello, sir.
Yes, sorry, I didn't read myself. Can you hear me?
Very well said, Madam Claire.
So perfectly. So the question actually seeks to know that in trying to mitigate data breach, can artificial intelligence be used to bar systems that try to legally access people's data? Of course. Now, one of the things that NIPSI, as a data controller, has done with the NIA is tokenization. That's why when you go on their portal now, download behalf, now what you're going to get first, you cannot reveal your NIN. Why? Because your NIN has been tokenized. So it's a measure of, anonymization of your personal data, which is fine. But then there's another side of it. And that is the side that, artificial intelligence in whatever form it is broken down to and is manifested or applied as a capacity to violate this personal data. And that's why we talk about responsible artificial intelligence, responsible here. Now, when you look at that, even Section 37 of the NDP makes a provision on auto decision making, particularly when it comes to using algorithm to make some decisions. As we speak today, of course, there's a Supreme Court decision, in the UK on using algorithm, in processing personal data, because it has a way of profiling people, and some kind of discrimination get to be resulted. That's one. Number two, when you review Section 28 of NDP, which makes provision for data protection impact assessment, which to me is not even detailed yet, because a couple of weeks ago we had a rant on some very important or salient provisions of NDP, and of course recommendations were made to the controller. The controller is about to come up with directives in implementing NDP. Of course, NDP is already expert and enforceable. But I can tell you categorically, the provisions of NDPR implementation framework, are even more detailed when it comes to data protection impact assessment. Because the only thing you will see in Section 28 of NDP when it comes to DPI is more of when the processing of personal data is likely to lead or result into high risk of interest, of rights and freedom of natural persons. So in this situation, I think our concern of AI would help protect personal data, but more of, because we have been doing that, but more of the harm that can cause. And one of the things that have been done to that, in that regard, it's actually introducing DPIA. So when you know that there's a lot to, for example, let me give you one of the provisions of both NDPR framework and GDPR, provisions of Article 35 of GDPR, which is clear. Now, when there's a likelihood of high risk to rights and freedom of natural persons, when there is to be undertaking a data processing activity, you need to be sure that one, if there is an innovative process, then you need to conduct DPIA. If new technology was deployed, then DPIA will be required. If there is intense use of personal data, there are actually about 9. And in fact, let me say this, I believe that there should be more than 9. But with time, we will get to have more cases. In fact, I have experience. I have, like I said, out of the 11 cases I have in court, I have about 2 of them that border on that, that border on area or subjects that GDPR W2 29 Working Party did not even contemplate. So my point is, our concerns now should not even be about what AI, how AI can protect our personal data, but how the protector can be a threat to our personal data. And one of such provisions is what provision on DPIA has come to be.
Okay, are you done, sir?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay, so sometimes you just get lost in listening to me. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's the much we can take on today's class because our time is fast, 25 minutes out of our time. I want to say a big thank you to our mentors who took out their time to be here with us today. Mr. Ridwan had to leave earlier. So big thank you to him. Thank you, Mrs. Sandra, aka, for your time. Thank you to Mr. Mr. Matthew, Mrs. Matthew, for being here with us as well. And of course, the grandpa himself, thank you very much, Mr. Solomon Okedara, for your time and for your wisdom. Thank you to Mr. Dennis for being with us throughout the call. Our mentees, thank you for being around. Thank you so much. Do not forget, there's one thing I've learned from Mr. Solomon is do not just get the knowledge and keep it to yourself. Ensure that you're putting it into practice. It's not enough to post on LinkedIn to show that you now have that knowledge. Look at practical ways on using this knowledge. Read out new materials, get to know more things. If you can read through the NDPA, please do that. Read it vis-a-vis the NDPR, GDPR, get to know more of the knowledge they are passing on. It gets more interesting. I know that it got really interesting for me. So thank you one more time to JIIPC for the opportunity to learn more and understand more. And our mentees, please for next class, let's be sure to bring in our A game and have everyone on board. My name is Goslav Kamalani, and that will be our time for today. Until next time on the Jidana Imam Internship Property and Creative Consult Mentorship and Internship Program. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.